The first time the Dolphin came alongside the rescue boat, Captain Elena Morales thought it was doing what dolphins often did in the bay after a storm, riding the wake, curious about the engine noise, flashing silver beneath the surface for the sheer joy of movement. The storm that had crossed the North Carolina coast overnight had left the water unsettled and brown-green, chopped by leftover wind and streaked with lines of floating reeds, driftwood, and bits of dock foam. Elena stood at the helm of the Sea Watch, a 32-foot rescue boat operated by the County Marine Unit, and scanned the water beyond the inlet with practiced eyes. At 43, Elena had spent nearly half her life on boats, and she knew the difference between ordinary animal behavior and something that deserved a second look. By the third pass, the Dolphin had her full attention. It was a bottlenose, scarred lightly near the dorsal fin, not a large one but strong and healthy-looking. Instead of slipping away after one or two arcs through the wake, it kept circling tight around the bow, then darting off 20 yards to starboard before returning again. Each time it surfaced, it exhaled sharply and turned its head toward the same patch of water. Then it slapped its tail once, hard, as if emphasizing a point. Behind Elena, rescue diver Ben Carter looked up from the gear bench. "That's the same Dolphin, right?" Elena nodded. "Same one." Ben stood and braced a hand on the rail. At 36, broad-shouldered and calm under pressure, he had the kind of steady presence that made rookies trust him and panicked victims listen. He watched the Dolphin make another loop, then frowned. "It's not playing." "That's what I was thinking." Tasha Green, the team's paramedic, stepped out of the cabin doorway with a trauma bag in one hand and followed their gaze. She was the youngest on the crew, only 27, but sharp, quick, and unflappable in a crisis. "Could be an entanglement nearby?" "Maybe," Elena said. "Or a calf, or debris." She eased the throttle back. "Either way, we take a look." The Sea Watch slowed to an idle. The morning had turned bright after the storm, but the water still carried that uneasy look it got after bad weather, as if it had not decided whether it was finished being dangerous. The Dolphin surfaced again, so close Elena could see the smooth dark eye and the faint rake marks on its side. Then it veered away, made a tight circle, and stopped almost in place over a patch of water that looked no different from the rest. Ben leaned over the gunwale. "There's something below." Elena cut the engine. The sudden silence made the slap of small waves against the hull sound louder. Far off, a gull cried. The Dolphin remained near the boat, surfacing once, then twice, then making another tight arc around that same spot. Elena pointed. "Ben, mask on. Quick look first. Tasha, stand by." Ben was already moving. He pulled on fins, mask, and a short tank rig they used for rapid checks in shallow coastal water. "Depth? Should be 15 to 20 feet here," Elena said. "Mud bottom, maybe old mooring cables. Watch yourself." He gave one short nod and slipped over the side. The water swallowed him in a rush of bubbles. Elena stepped to the rail and tracked the line of his movement by the flicker of his tank and fins below the surface. The Dolphin stayed nearby but kept its distance from Ben, circling once beyond him, then surfacing close to the stern. Tasha squinted into the water. "Still there?" "Yeah," Elena said quietly. 20 seconds passed, then 30. Ben's head broke the surface. "There's a hull down there," he called, pulling his mask to his forehead. "Small skiff, overturned, snagged on something. Looks recent." Elena's grip tightened on the rail. "Anyone visible?" "Couldn't tell from above. I need another look under the edge." He took a breath and disappeared again. Elena and Tasha exchanged a glance. Storm mornings always brought trouble. Boats broken free from moorings, weekend fishermen who thought they could outrun weather, drifters sleeping aboard old skiffs that were one rotten plank away from sinking. But the Dolphin's behavior, the tight circling, the refusal to leave, put a hard knot in Elena's stomach. Ben was under longer this time. When he surfaced again, his voice was different, sharper. "We've got a person." Tasha was at the rail instantly. "Alive?" "I think so. Under the hull. There's an air pocket." He wiped water from his face. "Male, maybe 40s. Wrist cuffed behind his back. He's barely conscious." For a split second, nobody spoke. Then Elena's training took over. "Tasha, prep oxygen, hypothermia gear, trauma kit." Ben, what do you need? Second diver would slow us down. I can get him out if we roll the skiff enough to widen the gap. But I need the lift bag and cutter. He's wedged under a bench support. One ankle may be tangled. Elena moved immediately. Do it. Everything that followed happened fast, but later each of them would remember it in perfect fragments. The metallic snap of clips as Ben grabbed the lift bag, Tasha dropping to her knees to line up airway supplies on the deck, the Dolphin surfacing once more off the stern and then drifting farther back as if its part was done. Ben went down with the cutter, the inflatable lift bag, in a short line. Elena held position with the boat hook and watched the water with a focus so intense it felt like pain. She could see the vague dark shape of the overturned skiff below them now, tilted slightly on one side. Probably a 17-foot John boat or old outboard skiff, caught on a submerged mooring chain or stump. Storm chops slapped lightly against the Sea-Watch's hull while seconds stretched long. Then a string of bubbles rushed upward. A moment later, the lift bag surfaced off the port side, partly inflated from Ben's tank. The wreck shifted under the water. Elena heard a muffled thump rise from below. "Come on," Tasha whispered. The bag lifted further. Water boiled around it. The edge of the skiff rose just enough to open a wider pocket beneath. Ben's arm appeared first, then his head, then the limp body of a man in a soaked blue shirt. Ben had one arm across the man's chest and was kicking hard, towing him clear. The man's face was gray-white, lips dark, eyes half-closed. His wrists were indeed cuffed behind his back, and one ankle was wrapped in a line of frayed rope with a chunk of metal chain still attached. "Get him!" Ben shouted. Elena and Tasha hauled together. The man came over the rail awkwardly, heavy with water, and collapsed onto the deck with a weak choking sound. Tasha was on him before he stopped moving, rolling him slightly, clearing his airway, checking for breathing and pulse. "Pulse thready," she said. "Breathing shallow. He's cold. Very cold." She looked up. "Ben?" Ben climbed over the rail, ripped off his mask and dropped beside her. He had maybe 6 inches of air under there. He was banging on the hull when I first got close. He looked at the handcuffs and swore under his breath. This was no accident. The man coughed weakly and tried to move his arms. Pain hit his face in a hard twist. Tasha leaned close. "Sir, don't fight it. You're safe. You're on a rescue boat. Can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered. For one confused moment, he seemed not to understand where he was. Then he rasped, "Don't let them." His head lolled. "Elena," Tasha snapped, "we need the doc now. Call EMS and sheriff. Hypothermia, near drowning, possible assault." Elena was already reaching for the radio. "County Dispatch, this is Marine Rescue Sea-Watch. We have one adult male recovered alive from an overturned skiff approximately 1 mile east of Marker 12. Victim found handcuffed with possible criminal assault involved. Request EMS and law enforcement at Harbor Point Marina immediately." As she spoke, the man coughed again, harder this time, and seawater spilled from his mouth. Tasha and Ben worked in practiced rhythm, oxygen mask, blankets, vitals, careful reassessment. Ben produced a bolt cutter from the emergency locker and looked at Tasha. "Do it," she said. The metal cuffs snapped open a second later. The man's wrists were raw and badly bruised, but not bleeding heavily. Tasha touched his shoulder. "Stay with me. What's your name?" He swallowed painfully. "Noah. Noah Mercer." "Good. Noah, I'm Tasha. You're safe. Do you know what happened?" His eyes opened a little wider at the word safe, as if he did not quite believe it. He sucked in a ragged breath. "Boat. They put me on the boat." "Who did?" Noah's gaze shifted, unfocused, then sharpened suddenly with fear. "Rick Donnelly." Ben and Elena both looked up. Everyone in that county knew Rick Donnelly's name. He owned Harbor Point Marina, half the fuel docks in the bay, and a marine construction company with contracts up and down the coast. He sponsored fishing tournaments, donated to the sheriff's re-election fund, and put on the kind of public smile people trusted too easily. Tasha kept her voice steady. "Who is Rick Donnelly to you?" "Employer," Noah whispered. "I did books. I found transfers, cash, fake repair invoices." He winced, fighting for air. "I told him I was going to federal agents." Ben stared at him. "And then?" Noah closed his eyes briefly, as if pulling himself through the memory. "He asked me to meet him. Said he wanted to talk. At the dry storage lot. 2 men with him. Hit me. Put me in the skiff. Cuffed me. His face twisted. Thought they'd sink it offshore. Storm cover everything. Elena felt a slow, cold anger settle in her chest. She had seen accidents, stupid decisions, drunken fights, even the aftermath of smuggling runs that went bad. But the neat cruelty of this, handcuffing a man and leaving him under a storm-tossed skiff to drown, was something else. Tasha adjusted the oxygen mask. Noah, listen to me. You need to save your strength. We're almost there. His hand moved weakly against the deck, searching for something to hold. For a second, his fingers brushed the coil of rope beside him, then slackened. He turned his head slightly toward the stern. The Dolphin surfaced there once, smooth and quiet now, as if checking on the outcome. Noah's brow tightened. That Dolphin? Ben glanced back. Yeah. Noah stared toward the water, dazed. He kept bumping the hull. Elena looked at him. What? Under the mask, Noah gave a tiny nod. When I woke up, under there, thought I was dead. Then I heard it. Tapping, movement. It kept circling. Every time I banged, it came back. Tasha did not comment, but Elena saw the flicker in her face. Realism was one thing, sentiment another. Maybe the animal had been curious about the wreck. Maybe it had reacted to the noise. Maybe that was all. But if Ben had not looked down when he did, if the Dolphin had not kept returning to that exact spot, Noah Mercer would have been dead before noon. They reached Harbor Point Marina in under 11 minutes. An ambulance was already waiting on the dock, along with 2 sheriff's deputies and a cluster of marina employees drawn by the sirens and the sight of the rescue boat coming in fast. Elena recognized one of the deputies, Mark Ellis, a square-faced man she had worked with on boating incidents before. He climbed down to help receive the stretcher, but when Noah saw the sheriff's brown uniform, panic flared in his eyes. No, he gasped, grabbing weakly at Tasha's sleeve. Not sheriff, state police, FBI. Donnelly's got people here. Ellis heard him and frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Elena stepped between them. It means you can wait until EMS stabilizes him and higher-level investigators arrive. He was found handcuffed under a wrecked skiff and named your biggest marina donor within 30 seconds of waking up. Nobody interviews him alone. Ellis's face hardened, but he said nothing. The paramedics took Noah and moved fast toward the ambulance. Tasha climbed in beside them to continue care. Ben began giving a statement to the second deputy. Elena stayed on the dock long enough to watch the ambulance pull away, then turned and saw something that fixed her suspicion even more firmly. At the far end of the marina parking lot, beside a black pickup, stood Rick Donnelly. He was in a navy windbreaker and boat shoes, holding a phone in one hand. Tall, fit, silver at the temples, he looked like every coastal businessman who ever cut a ribbon and shook hands for the paper. But when his eyes met Elena's across the lot, there was no confusion there. No surprise, only calculation. He got into the truck and drove away before any deputy approached him. By evening, the story had spread across the county. Marine Rescue had pulled a handcuffed man from beneath an overturned skiff. The man had survived. The skiff was linked to property leased through one of Donnelly's shell companies. Noah Mercer was in intensive care but stable. And because Elena had called in the state bureau instead of leaving the case at the local level, the investigation changed hands before the first cover story could set. Over the next 2 days, pieces fell into place with ugly speed. Noah had worked as an accountant for Donnelly Marine Holdings for 6 years. He had recently copied records showing payments funneled through repair invoices, ghost subcontractors, and storage fees for boats that did not exist. A federal financial crimes task force had already been quietly looking at Donnelly for tax evasion and smuggling-related laundering. Noah, frightened but determined, had finally decided to talk. Donnelly had found out. Security footage from a nearby bait shop showed Noah arriving at the dry storage lot the evening before the storm. Later footage showed Donnelly's foreman and another employee towing a skiff out behind the lot in heavy rain. Cell phone records placed Donnelly there too. Divers recovered the skiff and found fresh impact marks, a cut fuel line, and concrete blocks in the bow. It had not simply capsized in the weather. It had been prepared to sink. Noah spent 48 hours in the hospital. Tasha visited once at the end of her shift. bringing nothing more dramatic than a cup of decent coffee from the machine in the staff lounge and the update that he would probably recover fully. He looked older out of the water, his face lined with exhaustion, his wrists wrapped in clean dressings. But his voice was clearer. "They arrested him?" he asked. "Rick Donnelly and two others," Tasha said. "Attempted murder, kidnapping, conspiracy. More likely coming." Noah let out a breath that was almost a laugh and almost grief. "I kept thinking if I could just stay awake long enough, maybe someone would come." He looked at her. "You know what's strange? The thing I remember most isn't the men who put me there." "What is it?" "The sound under the hull." He looked toward the dark hospital window. The storm had mostly passed by then. I could hear the water hitting fiberglass, my own breathing, my heart pounding. Then every so often there'd be this thump and a sweep of movement outside. I started hitting the side of the boat with my shoulder because I had nothing else. And every time I did, it came back. He smiled weakly. "If I tell people I think a dolphin helped save my life, I'm going to sound crazy." Tasha shook her head. "Not crazy, just lucky." He was quiet for a moment. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Did anyone see it again?" Tasha thought of the gray-blue water behind the rescue boat, the smooth arc of the animal's back, the last quiet surfacing near the stern before the dock. "Yeah," she said. "We saw it." A week later, Noah was discharged. State investigators arranged for him to stay under protection while the case moved forward. But before he left town, he asked if he could visit the Marine Unit dock. Elena agreed. It was a cool morning, bright and clear, the storm chaos long gone. The bay looked innocent again, sunlight scattering off small ripples as if the water had never held anything darker than fish and tide. Ben was checking gear when Noah arrived with one of the investigators. He moved carefully, still stiff, and the bruises on his face had only partly faded. But he walked on his own. Elena shook his hand gently. "Good to see you upright." "Good to be upright." Ben grinned. "That's usually our goal." Noah looked out at the sea watch and then across the water beyond the breakwater. "I don't know how to thank you." Elena shrugged. "You already did. You stayed alive." He smiled at that, then his face grew serious. "I keep thinking about how close it was. If you'd been 10 minutes later—" Ben finished the sentence for him. "You wouldn't be here." Noah nodded. He looked down at his bandaged wrists, then back up. "My sister wants me to move inland after this. Says I've had enough ocean for one lifetime." "And what do you want?" Elena asked. Noah looked at the water a long moment. "I want to testify. I want Donnelly buried in paperwork and prison time. And after that," he exhaled, "after that, maybe I want quiet." A splash sounded just beyond the dock. All three turned. The same bottlenose dolphin surfaced briefly near the pilings, rolled once in the light, and disappeared. Ben raised an eyebrow. "Well." Noah stared at the spot where it vanished. "That's him." "We can't know that," Elena said automatically, though her tone was softer than the words. Noah smiled faintly. "No, we can't." But none of them moved for a few seconds. The trial began 5 months later in federal court. By then, the case had widened far beyond Noah's attempted murder. Donnelly's companies were tied to fuel fraud, falsified contracts, and offshore transfers that pointed to a laundering operation authorities had been trying to crack for years. Noah's testimony, combined with the documents he had preserved and the physical evidence from the skiff, gave prosecutors what they needed. Donnelly tried to present himself as a respectable businessman betrayed by a disgruntled employee and overzealous investigators. It did not hold. Too many facts, too many records, too many lies stacked on top of each other. Elena attended one afternoon of the proceedings on her day off, sitting quietly in the back. Noah was on the stand when she arrived. He looked thinner, more formal in a suit, but steadier than the man they had pulled from under the hull. He answered every question clearly. When the defense attorney tried to shake him, he did not break. And when the prosecutor asked him what he remembered most from that morning beneath the overturned skiff, Noah paused only a second. "I remember realizing someone wanted me gone," he said, "and then I remember realizing I might not be alone down there after all." The courtroom went still. He did not say Dolphin. He did not need to. Donnelly was convicted on all major counts. He received a long sentence, his assets were frozen, and 2 of his employees took plea deals that confirmed the details of what had happened on the storm night. Noah Mercer's name disappeared from the headlines after a while, which was exactly how he wanted it. He moved to a small town farther north and found remote accounting work with a nonprofit. Once, months later, Elena received a handwritten card at the Marine Unit office. Inside was a short note. "You and your crew gave me back a life I had almost stopped believing in. I still wake up some nights hearing the inside of that hull, but now I also remember the sound of your boat engine above me. That helps more than I can explain. Thank you. Please thank Ben and Tasha too." There was no mention of the Dolphin. Elena kept the card anyway. The story did not leave the county. People told it on charter boats and fishing piers, in bait shops and waterfront bars, each retelling polished a little by memory. Some versions made the Dolphin into a hero with almost human intent. Elena never liked those versions. She was too practical for that. Animals were animals. The sea was the sea. Luck and training and timing had saved Noah Mercer's life. But she had also seen that scarred dorsal fin cut the water again and again over the same patch of storm-stained bay until a rescue captain finally paid attention. She had seen Ben come up out of the water saying there was a man alive below. She had watched Tasha bring that man back from the edge while a dolphin surfaced quietly behind the boat as if waiting for the outcome. So when new volunteers joined the Marine unit and asked whether the story was true, Elena told it the same way every time. A storm had passed. A dolphin kept circling the rescue boat. The crew stopped to investigate. Divers found an overturned skiff. Under it, in a pocket of failing air, was a handcuffed man who should have died before anyone reached him. Then she would shrug and add the only part she felt certain about. Whether the dolphin meant anything by it or not, she'd say, it stayed there long enough for us to look. And in Elena's world, where the difference between life and death was often no bigger than a second glance, that was miracle enough.